to understand the nuances of that transition and leaders and their activities, etc., to better guide us into what is really best for the long-term future of our country. So, my question goes something like this. What have you been in search of during this period? A party that could make a difference or an opportunity to make a difference? What have you learned over these years about Liberian political parties, especially in light of the fight to move from this one-party system to multi-partyism and the resulting legacy of violence which resulted from said move? So could you shed light on this experience for us?
What I've learned is that political parties are still in a growing stage in this country. Over the years, as I mentioned in my statement, because of the politics of exclusion, right after election, you find most political parties falling tent and joining with the ruling party. Our party, my current party, the Liberty Party, is trying to make a difference. We have not joined the ruling party, and we haven't followed the route of other political parties, or should I say some other political parties in the past. We have not committed ourselves to violence. We continue to pursue the path of political engagement because we believe that Liberians are capable of governing ourselves in a truly democratic fashion. There is still a lot of work to do in a country like ours with 85% unemployment, about 90% of the people living below the poverty line, the absence of a legacy of political parties that exist after election. The temptation is great for political parties to fool and just be quiet. You cannot imagine the sacrifice that some are making now just to continue to remain the alternative voice for the people of Liberia. And we try to say to the government, even the ruling party, the role that we play now is even in their interest, because there has to be someone who will speak up, even if one supports the ruling party, even if one assumes that they know a lot. No one or no one group of people has a monopoly or an exclusivity on the way things should be done. So it is in the interest of all of us to have a party like Liberty Party out there continuously talking on issues, not because we dislike the government, but because it is important. We all got selfish motives for doing what we do. I too have a selfish motives. I'd like to see my grandchildren return to Liberia and grow up here. We must make sure that there is peace and stability. And we have learned that the one-party system doesn't work. Thank you, sir.
So we've learned that it doesn't work and that multi-partyism is better, but yet we see such a diversity in this multi-partyism. I was wondering if we were to look at all of these parties, would they each have a platform or a view that is uniquely different, or are their views ethnically linked, or are their views I don't know, I've just wondered, you've been in the system, so have you ever sat to talk amongst yourselves to see why such a diversity is essentially necessary, especially when you just said you wouldn't want your party to merge, and we realized that there were several elections that could have gone differently if there was a view of the whole as compared of the view of the self. And when sometimes it seems that when the view of the self predominates, it tends to take away and give credence to groups that may not be in the best interest of all of us. So, I just wonder, have the parties ever sat to debate or discuss these issues with regards to what is really better? This continuous multi-partyism in the sense of 30, 40 parties as compared to maybe a consolidated group centered on core platforms that make a difference, reflecting the ethnic and cultural values of our country. So I don't know.
Let me go back to the start of your question. I have not seen the political platform of any other party in this country. I can tell you the Liberty Party has a well-developed platform, and I don't think any other party in this country here would build on the platform that we use. But we have a choice as a people. We have the extremes. We've had the one-party system for many years. It didn't work. As an alternative to that, we opted for the multi-party system. I do agree that the proliferation of political parties just not healthy. There are too many parties. You have political parties that don't even have an office. You have political parties that you don't hear about, and you will not hear about until the next election. Parties need to be regulated. There need to be new standards.
Thank you. Okay, my next one. Again, I'm sorry, some of these questions are philosophical, but again, this is an aspect of our concern to understand the root causes of what happened during this period. For example, you stated that the key problem for political leaders is the politics of exclusion and intolerance. Indirectly, are we not saying that the key problem with politics is the ethnic moral inadequacy of leaders to overcome their own selfish heart? They talk the talk of people and democracy, but their actions reflect the same self-interest politics as seen from the diplomacy of some developed nations, which even affected our country. In Africa, our clear sign of this self-interest politics is the rampant state of disease, ignorance, and poverty all around us, in the midst of great wealth, interestingly enough. What can we do to change this state of mind and heart which governs our politics? Clearly, the rule of law and the so-called institutional religion alone has not succeeded. Over our 160 plus years of history to make the expected impact. The Liberian civil crisis itself has shown that. The TRC was created to facilitate a process of healing by giving key players an opportunity to show their heart of remorse or change. But regrettably, we have seen a lot of justification and lack of remorse. Can true reconciliation take place by external ceremonies only, without a revolution of the mind and heart of our people, especially our leaders? So, do you have anything you would like to share on that topic?
I'm still waiting for the question, Commissioner. You lost me somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, the last one. Do you think, can reconciliation take place? You gave us many good things that need to be done for reconciliation. I see these as like ceremonies, actions. But can that really bring the change that we need here and here with regards to decision making and utilizing of resources? We're a rich country. Africa has the greatest resources in the world today. But yet you look around our continents, you see poverty, ignorance, disease. You go elsewhere in other countries where they don't yet have even 10% of our resources, and you see huge development. Look like Korea. Recently they were just as poverty stricken as we were. But today, in less than 20, 30 years, they're 9th country in the world, or 8th. So, when you talk about this nice rule of law and, the rhetoric of politics and democracy, and you don't connect that to the character, the mind, the heart, the values, not just the book knowledge. Got a lot of beautiful politicians out there with high degrees and everything, but they're just simply, basically self-centered people seeking their own interests. So that's why I'm talking. And we talk about reconciliation in the true sense. Is it possible, in your opinion, without dealing with this inner spiritual or moral factor in leadership? Because the common people, you can't expect them to change overnight. They're there. But the group that's up there, that 10, 20% that already have made it, they can make a difference in the lives
of the majority that are below, by the decisions they make when they are given that political power. Because political power is you're taking the power of the whole and giving it to one or two people. If they misuse it, then the whole suffers. So, what do you think about
Mr. Commissioner, if I didn't think reconciliation would work, I wouldn't be here.
Okay.
I believe that as a people, we can reconcile. Now, you talked about what's happening in the West or other countries that have less resources than we have. How come they're developing and we cannot? Couple of reasons. One, generally, a human being is a human being. If you did not have certain rules and norms that govern your affairs, you probably would be like anybody else out there. But the reasons why people in the other part of the world appear to act differently from the way we behave is that they have developed institutions over the years. When you have a leader that is corrupt or that is bad, the institution is strong enough to throw him out or her out. The bad thing about our country is that all our politics have been built around personalities. As you have seen throughout our history, if you have a good president, Liberia, good things happen. If you have a bad president, bad things happen. It should not be that way. We should have developed, and now it is our challenge, the challenge of my generation, to develop the institutions in this country so that we can throw the bad people out. And it should not be said, as you said it, that we give all the power to the political leader. Under our system of government, we have 3 branches of government. Let me give you an example. Getting paid. Sometimes you may hear a legislator say, oh, I haven't gotten paid yet. And they want to blame the president. But the provision in the Constitution of Liberia is that the legislative branch of government, the first branch of government, they're the people who control the money, who are supposed to allocate and appropriate money. They're supposed to decide what money gets expended and what money doesn't. But because of the legacy that has been passed on to us, people do not realize that. So we have to make the effort for them to change. You see, because the example of the ordinary Liberian on the street, those of us who have been blessed with the benefit of Western education, those of us who have been blessed to have these positions, if we don't make the changes that are necessary, we run the risk of trouble. Because no human society is static. It's dynamic. It's going to change. Change is going to come about. Now we can allow the change to proceed through a peaceful democratic means, or the people out there, like they've done before, will take it over. So the thing is, we as Liberians must question ourselves, not just political leaders. I like for one to do a survey in Monrovia and say, give an example, you got 1,000 Liberians who got bachelor degrees, who earn a good salary, and ask them, how many of you belong to a political party? The vast majority, if they do belong, will tell you they belong to the ruling party. We do not believe that there is a need for us to develop the institution. So, you know what happened 2 week party time, right? Every Liberian was a member of 2 week party. After 2 week party, NDP came. Everybody, if you ask your daily people, will tell you, no, I'm not a member. But invariably, they were members. Either by their action or by their non-action. After NDP and MPP. Even if they were not card-carrying member, they were finding some way to slip behind the back door to make a deal with the ruling party. Same thing happening today. Liberians want good things to happen, but we are not prepared to make the sacrifice for these things to happen. And they're not going to happen by chance. There have to be a few of us. I meet with the president and I say to her, I love you, you are my friend. Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong. And until we can have many more Liberians like that, who have no sinister motive, but all we want to do is make sure our country, you and myself been abroad for school. We know how the people run their country over there. We know we sat in classes with some of those same people. How come they do so much better than we? I see Liberians who in the States complying with the norms of the people country. Sure, they reach the rouse fee. You get one banana, take the peel and throw it outside the window. What happened? That wish we got in the country? No, because we haven't taken the time to build the institution and there is no sanction. If Charles Brumskine knew that he would be punished if he threw the banana peeling on the street, regardless of his status in Liberia, he would not throw it there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. Again, I beg your indulgence if I should ask you a question that may have been asked my colleague as I came a little bit late, so I beg your indulgence on that. But I perhaps will start off by asking you to tell us something about your background. Who is Charles Brumskine? And what was it that motivated your entry into national political life? So maybe you can just start by telling us briefly, who is Mr. or Councillor Charles Walker Brumskine?
As you said, Councillor, I'm a lawyer, I'm married, I have grandchildren, I'm from Grand Bassa, I'm a Bassa man, and there's so much about me. I've been married for 33 years, happily I should add, and what motivated me to enter politics, as I said to you, I saw a need. There was an opportunity of history that I just could not resist. A challenge that I couldn't let pass me by. People have been killed. Country been destroyed. We all have lost everything. Something had been unleashed against the people and there was a need for someone to step in. Risk of being killed. And I came in and did my best.
As to say, Mr. Commonly said, politics sometimes do make strange bad fellows. You've been a lawyer, practicing lawyer, for the most part been resident in Monrovia and not been involved in the country's turbulent politics. And at a certain period, when you do decide to venture into politics, you do so, as to say, with somewhat looking at your whole experience and all of that, with a rather strange bedfellow. How can you reconcile yourself with this? Yes, young, lawyer, aspiring, wanting to make a change, but then hoping to make a change, joining an individual whose track record, I don't know whether you fully understood or were aware of, but whether you did have any great hopes of securing this kind of change in this relationship with the MPFL, with its leader, Mr. Taylor. So the question is that didn't you consider it strange, given your background, your association, all of that, that you would join a political party of someone who, again, like you say, was more or less the head of this monster that had been unleashed, according to you?
Well, you know, Commissioner Stewart, if you want to change, where do you go? Those things are not good, right? Right? Those things are not working, right? You don't change the good things. Don't forget, 1995, 1996, that was the only political party active or about to be active on the ground. And the thing it was to get in there and help our people. But the bigger question, Commissioner, what if I didn't go in? What experience would you have had of that period in our history? What would you have been able to say? You would have been saying today that it is not possible to have a Liberian Senate independent of the executive. Because I went in, you and your children will read that it is possible that Brumskine went in. And even under those circumstances, under his leadership, the Senate was independent of President Taylor, the executive. Something that probably hasn't happened in a long time.
The extent to which one may want to claim credit for such, but I mean, throughout Liberian history, we have had outstanding leaders, even from your own county, who have stood up to the excesses of the presidency, been in the House of Representatives, been in the House of Senate. So in our national political history, we have had, maybe during the period of Tubman, even during the period of Tubman, there were those who stood up to oppose the excesses of Tubman, and as a result lost their privilege and lost whatever. So can we say fairly that in our history, if we're looking at the personalities, individual figures, or instances or examples of leaders standing up to the excesses of the presidency, would it not be fitting to make mention of those who preceded you rather than using your example as the fulcrum on which we can say, yes, this is what the Senate, at least this is what we know the Senate should have looked like, because Mr. Brumskine did go into the Senate?
Yeah, Commissioner, I stand to hear you. I thought you were naming some names you said, but you didn't complete your statement. I thought you were naming some people. I didn't hear them.
There were national leaders in the past.
No, I agree with you. I thought you were naming them.
Well, I mean, not necessarily name any particular, name any particular individual, but I mean, they came from all of the counties that were at the time politically recognized as one of the subdivisions of the country. I'm not talking about the time when you had the Western, Central, and Eastern provinces. I'm talking about the time you had counties. Even from those original counties, there were people who stood up, who established a track record of honesty and working in the interest of the people. And
no, you're right. I'm sure there is no question. Our history is replete with great men and women in every aspect of our national lives. Okay, so that I don't deny any of that. I was saying to you, in our generation, okay, we were born and we inherited the legacy of the legislature being a rubber stamp. In fact, Commissioner Stewart, I think that's a phrase I took from you. That legislature was a rubber stamp. Right? So that's something we inherited. So when I speak about standing up It is not to say other people didn't work. I'm talking about our time. When you, Commissioner, started as an active politician around here. I learned a few things from you too, remember?
Okay, we move on. Now, at the time you got elected into the Senate, based on a proportional representation arrangement on account of the crisis in the country. But there were consistent expressions of concern by political parties, by other individuals, about having conducting elections on a playing field that was not level. And if I should illustrate, one, points that were made on the question of the playing field being level. One, the disarmament, it had been acknowledged that yes, there was disarmament, but disarmament was partial. And there were benchmarks that should have been met by the warring factions that were not met. Elections were proceeded. If I can list, for example, that all warring factions were asked to declare the strength of the arsenals, the location of the arsenals, and the number of men they had under arms as a prerequisite to disarmament. This was not done, and the elections were held, among other things, that there were many thousands of people who had been subjected to years of demeaning existence and who at that point cared only about bread and butter issues, and would, in such circumstances, coming out of a situation where you had April 6th, in which there was a display of military might and power, and one candidate threatened to return to the bush if he was not elected, and that the playing field was not level. Yet, the elections are held. On reflections, don't you think that some of the problems that surfaced later regarding your confrontation with Mr. Taylor as to how power was handled in the country, don't you think that was the outcome of, directly or indirectly, of holding elections on a playing field that was not level?
Commissioner Steele, I'm not going to accept your premise in hindsight that the field wasn't level. At the time of the election, you were more of a politician than me. The question is, why did you accept to go into a political election if you figure out that the field wasn't level? This was not a situation of an incumbent presidency. This was a situation when everybody was going out and you.
Well, I just should remind you that there were other attenuating circumstances, such as what was clearly displayed, that there was fatigue on the part of the donor community, fatigue by ECOWAS to maintain the peace, keep in a situation of no war, no peace, and that had the elections not been held. Now, if you say, why did you go in the elections? I suppose you mean the political parties.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean personally, I mean political parties.
Yeah. So, and these were issues that were discussed here in Liberia, were discussed in Nigeria, and there was no discernible consensus on the issue. And the foreign minister of Nigeria at the time, Tommy Kimi, came in and like threatened political parties that they must behave, fall in the line, and participate in elections, else they're going to withdraw their troops and come hell or high water, and whatever the fate befalls Liberians, they will. So people went into elections. Don't you recognize that?
So you stated the fact. So, I mean, what can I say? The thing is, Commissioner Steele, there has hardly been an election in this country that someone didn't have a problem with. Why are we here today? Of course you know why, because of the 1985 elections. When Mr. Doe was declared winner, people decided to go for a war. 1985, our first majority popular election, people decided that they would not let the rule of law prevail. They didn't accept the election. 1997.
But to a point though, you mean even though the election results were contested, they were disputed, there were incidents of ballot burning, there were charges of vote rigging and all of that, are you saying that because people didn't accept the legality of what was a rigged election, so therefore they created the basis for the current conflict that we have, or that we've been experiencing?
Commissioner Steele, you are opinionating. You are giving a judgment that the election of 1985 was rigged. I don't give that judgment, sir. That's your judgment. You understand? I don't give that judgment. I accepted the result of the election, and I went on by my business. You see, that's what we have to do.
Well, I said that there were several instances that were brought to public attention, and there was widely held perception in the public that the NDPL was not the winner of the elections. It's not my opinion, but this is what the prevailing sentiments at the time, that elections were rigged. There were instances of ballot burning, except of course you denying that those things didn't happen.
I didn't know. I do not know, I should say. I wasn't in the position that you're in. I was a simple voter when I voted in 1980. The point I'm trying to make to you, Commissioner, is that every election we have has been flawed in one degree or the other. Okay? So when you start questioning one election, it permeates through all of our elections. The thing is, it's about us. And when I came before you today, I said, look, I'm here because of me. Okay? I mean, you know, we can stay here and throw the rock. People did that thing, a person did that thing. What would they? You know, like, I could ask you, Commissioner, can you come to this seat? Let me sit over there and ask you a few questions. You know, we can all ask questions.
Why not?
But we must realize, sir, that we are the problem. It's not the other people. Today, I'm the problem for you. I'm the bad guy. So I came and said, forgive me. All the yeah behind me, even being true, you are no man. We must move our country forward. We cannot live in the past. You think people didn't have complaint about this election that just went? You think I didn't have complaint about this election that just finished? And I decided, leave it. In the interest of Liberia, we must move on. So, Commissioner, that's the state of things.
At the time you entered politics, because prior to 1997, you had been just an ordinary voter, a passive onlooker, participant in national political life, passively, in a way, until you actively entered the fray in 1997. Were you aware at the time that the MPFL and its metamorphosis, the National Patriotic Party, had a track record that clearly pointed out, had a track record of human rights violations and abuse around the country? Were you aware of that?
Well, Mr. Commissioner, like I said to you this morning, and I repeat, I was never a member of MPFL.
No, I didn't say that.
I had to form.
I said by the time you entered politics.
Yeah, 1997, we
1997.
formed MPP. MPP was a new creature, clean slate.
And not the metamorphosized MPFL.
I mean, there you go again with your characterization. You know, I said to you, there was a new entity. Now, Commissioner, you can call it what you want to call it. Well, if you expect me to accept it, then we're not going to make progress. Okay? It was a new entity that was formed, right? And we brought some new life to it. We brought some new life to it, Commissioner. Commissioner, you have to be able to say, yes, you did something over 90 months. You have to be able to say that. You have to be able to find it in you to admit that some good things were done. I mean, to just stay inside and be against everything that happened during that period.
No, this is an inquiry, and we want to know, so we have to ask questions that, in your opinion, may be, in your mind's eye, may be opinionated. But the bottom line is we want to get at facts. So we ask these questions. So by that time, true, it may have been a new organization, but the results show that the bulk of its support was drawn from the same constituency that the MPFL came from. The leadership, most of its top rank and file were from the MPFL. So the perception, public perception, was that the NPP and the MPFL was more or less one and the same. And so, by the time you entered into the fold or formed the NPP, were you not aware, or were you aware at the time, that its leader had already established himself a record of violations of human rights abuse?
Of course, as I mentioned to you this morning, Mr. Taylor and I had discussed the atrocities that were committed during the war. Okay? I wasn't going to fight war. I was going to run a political entity. People can change, Commissioner.
Now, but
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No.
You and myself did things 10 years ago that we don't do anymore. We can change as human beings.
Now, you did say that you had no idea, or you were idealistic in believing that MPFL could have been put back on track. What was the basis of your idealism, given all what had happened around you?
What the basis of what?
What was the basis of your idealism, given all what had happened around you, although you were in the US for much of the time, but given the trail of death and destruction that the NPP had left in its wake, other warring factions had left in its wake, that you opt to join a party affiliated with the warring faction in whose wake or trail of destruction as others laid, then I want to ask, what was the basis of such idealism that this NPFL could be changed, or that the ambitions and of Mr. Taylor could be harnessed in a way that he would behave according to democratic norms and rules and respect for the rule of law?
Let me just let us reflect on the outcome of the election. You know how many Liberians felt in the same position like me? What was the outcome? I guess the MPP had about 75. I think election commission claimed that they stopped counting after they reached to 75. I think it really should have been like 85%. The people of Liberia wanted Mr. Taylor elected. I owe them a duty to go in and try to change what they had, to try to make sure the excesses that you spoke of did not occur again. I did my best. The records are there.
Okay, at which point, before or after your ascendancy to the high office of President Pro Tem of the Senate, at which point did you become aware that Mr. Taylor was involved in Sierra Leone?
I mentioned in my paper that I presented to you, in December of 1998, on my trip to the States, I was informed by people in the United States. And when I returned from the States, I went to Brussels, got the information confirmed. I came back to Liberia and set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the government. The Senate passed a resolution, although non-binding, asking President Taylor to meet with President Tijan Kaba. We even sent a resolution to the parliament in Freetown. It was like in January of 1999.
But if the resolution was non-binding, why did he?
No, but that was
to
the score
respect it?
commissioner. The Senate cannot compel the president to do anything unless you want, call him for something else. But it's called a non-binding because he's responsible under the Constitution to run the foreign affairs of the country. But we give a resolution. It's non-binding because you can't force him to do it, but it's a way of expressing the desire of the representatives of the people.
And what would you say was his response to that?
Say again?
What was his response?
Honestly, I left shortly after the resolutions were prepared and the committee was set up to go to Nigeria to observe the elections that brought Obasanjo to power. When I returned to Liberia, my days at the Senate were over.
Okay, now, there was a point in which you say like you had come and did this resolution and Mr. Taylor was clearly displeased with the non-binding resolution, and not too long after that you exited the political scene. But can I ask the question, was it because at that point you realized that Mr. Taylor was impervious to change, or because you realized that the furtherance of your personal political ambition was not possible within the ambit of a Taylor presidency?
What political ambition, Commissioner Steele?
Did you, like for instance, did you ever wish to become president? As we saw
you begin to sound like Mr. Taylor. That's exactly what he accused me of. But honestly, on the oath that I took this morning, at that time, I had no ambition to become president. My job was to be the best senator our country has ever had. And I tried that.
There were instances where you stood up to Mr. Taylor, and at the time there was, quite frankly, there was a dearth of political leaders, active on the scene, opposition political leaders, challenging Mr. Taylor. And at the time you stood up to him on several scores, it was perceived that, yes, you were in a confrontational situation with Mr. Taylor. But had it not dawned on you, or did you not, for whatever reason, suspect that given the trail of eliminations that occurred, one challenger after the other to Mr. Taylor's ascendancy had all been eliminated, did it not occur to you that you have found yourself confronted with a similar fate, given your genuine desire to initiate change in the country and limit the excesses of the presidency?
Commissioner Steele, I don't go around thinking about death. If I did, I won't be here. If I did, I would not have come home in 2003.
So can we say it was foolhardiness on your part?
Not to think about death?
No, can we say that it was foolhardiness on your part to enter a structure with the hope of changing it, stand up to challenge, and knowing that and not knowing what you'll be up against?
Commissioner, you can call it what you want to. And maybe that's why our country doesn't change. Because, look at the characterization. Foolhardiness because you wanted to stand up against Mr. Taylor. How many people would stand up if they would have the commissioner of the TRC call their action foolhardiness? Nobody would stand up.
It's a question.
Yeah, I know, but it's a characterization, Mr. Commissioner. All we ask when you come before a commission like this, right, is a degree of respect. I don't have to be here. You know? I don't have to.
Okay, was it naivety
That also.
on your part?
That also. That kind of question you ask. It's insulting, John. You know that.
So, did you
make a mistake in doing that? That sounds to reason. You ask somebody as a foolhardy or whether they're naive. I mean, where are we going? Is this a Truth and Reconciliation Commission or is this an inquisition? I mean, where are we going, John? I am supposed to be here to help you, to help our people reconcile.
Yes, but now.
Am I accused of an offense?
No, you're not accused.
If I am, then I can bring a witness.
No.
I mean a lawyer, because when you start to characterize my action.
No, you're not accused.
Because Commissioner Whitner, you should know. You're not going to go there with me. You should know that. You know me well. So let's be careful now. Let's start over and be civil.
Did you weigh the consequences? Did you assess the situation that here is a leader whose party you joined, who had on many occasions said that his walking stick that he carried, the tree from which it came, no other tree grew around it. A leader who had pronounced himself grand zoes of all zoes, Akatache, Dakbana, power, absolute power, and whose exercise of that power you knew very well. Sam Doki, Madame Noah Flomo, others who had been executed, who had lost their lives, who had, in a way, who it was said stood up to Mr. Taylor and in the process lost their lives. That's what I'm saying. Was it calculated? Did you weigh the input of those decisions you were making? Or did you not fully weigh, or you were not aware that since you were not a politician, that the waters you saw, they may have appeared shallow and you waded in but found that it was too deep? That's what I'm saying. On hindsight now, realistically assessing.
Commissioner Steele, what I said to you earlier, I don't go about worrying about my death. Whoever can have a juju stick, they can be what? The God that I serve. When I walk in the room, Commissioner, with your juju, it becomes impotent. It's of no potency. That's why I'm alive today.
Okay, and you try to initiate this change, and you got booted out, and then you left the country. Subsequently, returning at a time when Mr. Taylor was besieged, when political opponents were languishing in jail, some of them receiving world news attention of torture and all of that, Hassan Bility, several others. And you came back amidst such turbulence when there was a rebel invasion, when you had left claiming that your life was in danger. Unknown men with mischievous intent, I suppose, had shadowed your home, forcing you to flee. And then coming back when Mr. Taylor is besieged and you come back. What was the motivating force? Now recently, Mr. Cyril Allen appeared here and said that there was no real feud between you and Mr. Taylor, that it was more or less a tempest in the teapot, a family feud which had been settled, that you were related to Mr. Taylor by birth, and of course the other implications we could draw. So was it reasons of consanguinity that led you to believe that nothing could befall you, to come at a time when other opposition politicians were either silent, out of the country, or in jail, and come back? What was the motivating factor?
Commissioner, you would not understand. Even if I try to explain to you, you would not understand. I said to you earlier that my love for this country had brought me into politics to begin with. My love for this country brought me back in 2003. And I think most Liberians will be glad that I came. At the time I came, there was no politician to stand up.
You received a rousing
What?
A welcome. I said you received a rousing welcome.
Right. I guess you were one of the people too on the street waving.
Well, granted.
Yeah.
But you did receive a rousing welcome.
Commissioner, where are we going with this? Are you trying to prove that Brumskine a liar or what? What purpose was this now questioning?
No.
Are we trying to rehabilitate or reconcile something here?
We have a task
to
look at the role played by individuals, their motivations. You see, because 20 years from now, 50 years from now,
know the motivation.
Or 100 years from now, when we will not be around, there will be others coming after us who will be asking these very questions. Given what had been described as a very tempestuous political situation, how would one venture to return to the country at a time civil war is on raging, the belligerent forces knocking at the doors of the presidency, and you ran for fear of your life, you venture to come back amid such turbulent conditions? We're asking these questions today. They may be asked 100 years from now when we may not be around to provide such explanations. So I'm asking,
that's why I say,
what was the motivation?
You would not understand, because the different brands of politics. There are some politicians who operate on the cloud of darkness. Others like me who come out in the open, believing in my God, committing myself to Him. Nothing can happen to me. You know, when I came to Monrovia, you know, you went to visit me, I was literally in prison for 5 months. Passport taken. Okay? Like I said, if it were my time to die, I would have died. But we had a mission. And so I had to come. Election was 2003. At the time, we didn't know election would have been postponed. If I had not come, Tatila could have had an election. And he'd still be here. Commissioner, you would have still been a hand-bear politician. You would never have come on the scene to do what I did.
Well, granted.
Yes.
Do you have any blood ties with to Mr. Taylor?
What?
Do you have any blood ties?
None at all.
So we take it that when Mr. Allen, Cyril Allen, your former party chairman, said that here before this body that you did or do have blood ties to Mr. Taylor, that was not true.
I just told you, none at all. What will you want me to tell you?
I know I don't want a legalistic way.
Eh?
Is it?
I told you, plain English. No. The man, I'm a relative. No blood.
Okay. Come on. Now, you said in your presentation that you regret for not taking the opportunity to explain to the Liberian people the real intent and purpose of the SOFA. And you will recall that there were several incidents. Firstly, before those incidents, by the time of the Banjul Peace Conference, which you mentioned earlier, it had become clear to most observers and subsequently that the conduct, and even there were others who appeared before this commission testifying to the conduct of the AFL during the war, not only the AFL but the security apparatuses, that they were used in a way to advance personal interest and used against the collectivity of the Liberian people. So clearly most Liberians had hoped that those provisions calling for the restructuring of the military and security apparatuses would have been done in order to avert a situation where the security or the military would turn on its own people, as had been seen during the course of the war. And yet, that responsibility had been placed in ECOMOG, and you coming up being an active, ardent campaigner for the Status of Forces Agreement, there were those, and there are those who hold the opinion that this was the position you supported the Status of Forces Agreement was synonymous to the position taken by the MPFL as regards ECOMOG, and that such sentiments were underpinned by deep hostility to ECOMOG. Do you share this opinion, or do you disagree that the pursuit of this SOFA to its logical conclusion, which saw the exit of ECOMOG and then the subsequent relapse into conflict? Now, on hindsight, as you say, you regret that you didn't explain the purpose and intent. Would you say that the true purposes and intent of the SOFA were fulfilled as you had envisioned it? Was there a diversion from what it was? And why was it that it was not plain and apparent to most Liberians at the time, who thought that it was a ruse to kick ECOMOG out in order to further the personal ambition of Mr. Charles Taylor?
Mr. Commissioner, you either left the room during my deliberation or something wrong. But I explained to you, and I left a copy of it here for you. I explained to everybody here. Status of Forces Agreement. I defined it. I indicated that every agreement signed by the warring factions, by the ECOWAS, by the United Nations, I even indicated that Madeleine Albright of the United States, at the time permanent representative to the UN Security Council, all said there must be a Status of Forces Agreement signed. Status of Forces Agreement had nothing to do with restructuring our armed forces. I even mentioned to you a report in this document, a report by RRIN, which is the United Nations news organ, reporting that Charles Brumskine, as leader of the Senate, was pushing for SOFA when a representative of ECOWAS said, aren't they interested in staying in Liberia anymore? Because they and Taylor have problems.
Was it because then you had realized that such would have created further complications down the road that you tended to support such a position?
I don't understand you. So what? What's the question?
You said the ECOWAS representative said they were not interested in Liberia anymore and were threatened to leave. And you had called for the SOFA. Did you at the time realize that the government was treading a dangerous path by pushing or alienating ECOMOG to the point where it would call for a withdrawal and leaving the situation as it was?
Let's take it one step at a time, Commissioner. Do you understand the SOFA now? Let's make it clear. Do we understand that Status of Forces Agreement had nothing to do with ECOMOG leaving? Do we understand that now? Then we can move to the next part. I don't want to leave it hanging because then the people who are listening in the radio audience, right? I explained to them. I took more than 30 minutes to explain to them this morning. So you come back and you say this Status of Forces Agreement, so. So let's establish now, based on what I explained. In fact, the Status of Forces Agreement, after I spoke today, somebody called me and reminded me, I said it was sent to Liberia in 1991. No, it was given to the people when they left Banjul, 1990. Why? Because Status of Forces tells you it's a concept of international law. You don't bring foreign soldiers in a foreign country without that document. I gave an example before you came. If an army right now, the Status of Forces Agreement signed, you're probably not aware. If an unmale soldier shot a Liberian, our law provides that he must be arrested, right? But Status of Forces Agreement supersedes our law. It says that when the soldier shoots somebody, you take the soldier and give him to his command structure and he goes back home. You understand? So let's understand first that Status of Forces Agreement is not bad. If it were bad, ECOWAS would not have called for it. The UN would not have called for it. The Americans would not have called for it.
I don't think, well, from my understanding, it was not the issue of the Status of Forces Agreement in itself, but how such was being used as a ruse under which...
How it was used what?
How such was being used as a ruse under which devious intents could be accomplished. For example, we had a situation where the country had broken down and was being described all around as a failed state. This was a country that didn't have the ability, I won't say feed its citizens because that's been a long-standing problem. It didn't have the ability to provide electricity and running water to its citizens. It didn't have the ability to provide education, basically, to its citizens outside of Monrovia mainly. And in many, many other respects, it didn't even have the ability to defend itself from aggression. So the question is not whether the Status of Forces Agreement in itself is wrong, but the intent and purposes to which such can be manipulated and used to accomplish devious intent. Like for instance, we saw that there were red flags being raised, that Mr. Taylor was pushing for a Status of Forces Agreement because he had wanted to subvert the original intention to recreate the Liberian military and make it free of the kinds of prejudices, the kinds of ills it suffered from, defects it suffered from in the past, that led it to conduct itself in a way in which it did. And so, yes, the agreement was signed, ECOWAS left, and we saw the results. The Liberian government, under Mr. Taylor, did not restructure the military and security apparatuses in a way that would have given it geographical balance and everyone with ethnic balance, ethnic and geographical balance, as well as respect for the rules governing military behavior, relationship to citizens, and all of that. And so we saw the end results.
Okay, Commissioner, we're making progress. I hear what you just said. You have conceded that the Status of Forces Agreement was not bad. That is progress, right? Now let's move to your second step. Your second thing is that Taylor used the Status of Forces Agreement and he circumvented the real intent of it, right? The way you said, to get ECOMOG to leave.
What did the facts show?
Now, let's look at it now. We're finished with the first, now we're making the second one. Let's make progress here, right? I'm an old law professor, so bear with me. First thing here, we agree Status of Forces is not bad. That. Second thing, you say Taylor used it to treat ECOMOG bad. Where did the Status of Forces Agreement come from? It came from ECOWAS. Who is ECOMOG? A military force of ECOWAS. So if it could be manipulated, it could be changed. But ECOWAS, give me ECOWAS would not have endorsed it. And I said, not only ECOWAS, the United Nations, the Americans, a Status of Forces Agreement, I said to you this morning, maybe you were not here, had nothing to do with the restructuring of the armed forces. I mentioned to you in my statement, Akosombo Agreement said when it was signed September 1994. After a delay of 4 years, not signing the Status of Forces Agreement that was sent from Banjul, Akosombo said, you signed this Status of Forces within 30 days.
So are you saying, therefore, that the restructuring of the armed forces was not implicit in the Status of Forces Agreement, or neither was it subsumed in the Status of Forces Agreement?
Nothing. Nothing. Status of Forces Agreement had nothing to do with restructuring of armed forces. Status of Forces Agreement, let me give you some of the points that are in Status of Forces Agreement. One I already mentioned to you. Two, one of the points that I fought for. Anybody coming as an ECOMOG soldier would not, I don't care how long you stay in Liberia, you will not be allowed to obtain residency for the purpose of getting citizenship. Okay? We're very few in this country here. People from another country could come and override or take citizenship. There was nothing. We talk about the people coming in this country, they allowed to come with a passport. All they had to do was bring their dog tag, identification. There was nothing in Status of Forces Agreement. And I thought as a commissioner, you would have done your research.
But as senator, after the Status of Forces Agreement came into place, talking about research, my research tells me that there's a dialectical link between the Status of Forces Agreement, peace and security in Liberia, and the agreements that ended hostilities that introduced the forces here in the first place. So I don't see, from my perspective, how one can provide a disconnect or deny the dialectical link between peace and security in Liberia, Status of Forces Agreement, and the restructuring of the armed forces. Well, all of those boil down to the point of re-establishing the rule of law, establishing and consolidating peace in Liberia. But anyway, we move on.
No,
when you became a senator,
no, Mr. Commissioner, we got people listening to this conversation. You say you did your research. For the listening audience, name one document that you read that supports the point you make. One document, not two. I need the principle of the Status of Forces Agreement. I need the Akosomo Agreement. I need the ACLA clarification. You say you did research. One document.
All of those agreements were meant to secure peace in Liberia, right or wrong.
So what?
It was acknowledged.
Wait a minute.
It was acknowledged by all and sundry that the role of the military, the security forces, especially the army, where the military had virtually, the AFL had virtually lost support because of the way it conducted itself, scorched earth tactics, that all Liberians by the Banjul Agreement in 1990, when Monrovia had been reduced to fiefdoms, AFL, MPFL, and IPFL, all Liberians considered that the military, for consolidation of peace, by then we lack a national army, and those are possessing the ability to defend a nation is one attribute of sovereignty. So therefore, all of those peace agreements, all of those agreements, Status of Forces, all were designed to consolidate peace in Liberia. And in consolidating peace in Liberia, the restructuring of the military was an integral element. I don't see how you can deny it.
Commissioner Steele, I'm sorry, you are as wrong as they come. Status of Forces Agreement is a concept of international law that talks about the way how foreign troops are governed in a foreign country. Okay? So, I mean, let's not make a show here. That is what Status of Forces Agreement is all about.
Meant to achieve what objectives? What were the objectives? The peace agreement, the Status of Forces,
the Status of Forces Agreement was to, like any Status of Forces Agreement, America is signing one with Iraq. Liberia, United Nations got one with this government now. Okay? The Status of Forces Agreement says how a foreign troop conduct itself in a foreign country.
There's no argument about that.
It's so simple to understand.
But do they exist in a vacuum? If there was no war here, would a Status of Forces Agreement have become necessary? No.
John, don't argue. You want to argue law with me? Do not argue sentiment. Let's talk the law. I ask you, I said, John, give me one document you read. Give me one. John, you haven't read any document. We come here and perform, okay, like you know what you're talking. You do know what you're talking.
I know what I'm talking.
You do not know, John. You never studied law. You don't know international law. No, you don't know what you're talking about.
What is the purpose of foreign troops being in Liberia?
Purpose is. I told you.
What the foreign troops
what
came
the
to
purpose
Liberia?
of Forces Agreement is. I told you. You don't want to listen.
Foreign troops came to Liberia to restore peace. The United Nations troops are here because there was a breakdown of law and order.
So, what is Status of Forces Agreement done with UN?
The Status of Forces Agreement,
with the UN here, where it says
implicit in the Status of Forces Agreement is the provision that the United Nations now is restructuring the police and providing support for the restructuring of the army. Those were all key elements.
The Status of Forces Agreement
those conditions are not
no
fulfilled,
provision for structuring of police. Status of Forces has no agreement.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on.
Mr. Stewart?
You know, once you concede the point, then we move on. There's no point in you bringing these trivial arguments. You don't understand the point of law, and then you say, let's move on.
It's not the point of law. There's no triviality in the
argument. Status of Forces Agreement is a principle of law. It's a concept in law.
Meant to achieve what?
It doesn't come from literature.
Meant to achieve what? What conditions?
To regulate the foreign army in a foreign country.
Why were foreign armies here?
What I got to do with that?
Why were foreign armies here?
Forces for?
Did they come on vacation? Did they come for sightseeing, or they came to restore peace?
The point is, Status of Forces was not to restructure the armed forces. It was not to do that.
Okay, let's move on.
No, we're not moving on unless you understand the function of our forces.
I do. You express regrets of not explaining enough.
Do you understand now?
I do.
Okay, good.
I did before.
Then we'll move on.
All right, we'll move on. Now, there was a time when you held the position and maintained the position that as president pro tempore of the Senate, talking about the rule of law and all of that, you maintained that in line of succession, it was not the Speaker of the House of Representatives who was third in line in terms of succession. Rather, it was the President pro tem that assumed primacy in line of succession. Do you still hold that view today?
Commissioner Stewart, why are you getting involved in gossip? John, I am a lawyer. I read the Constitution. I taught the Constitution at law school. How would I possibly say that the Speaker is not in the line of succession? Did I say that to you, John? No, I didn't. You heard street talk and you come here. John, you trivializing this process.
I'm not.
You trivializing this process. This is supposed to be serious business for the people of Liberia. Now, if you don't want to do anything, tell me I'm wasting my afternoon. I leave and go. Okay? Because I mean, you know, where are we headed here? That I said that I want to be in line of succession of what? We either going to conduct this thing or I leave it and go.
Yes, because we're talking about you were head of the Senate and you made that position clear.
John, where I made it clear, everywhere, every time I spoke, there is a writing, there is a press statement. I mean, how could I say it? It's in the law.
Okay, let's move on.
Why we don't just close this thing? There's nothing else to ask, Brumskine. Let me go.
There are many questions to ask. Now, you talked about, let's go back to your time in the Senate. Were you in the Senate at the time when there was a writ that was issued by the Supreme Court concerning the Tradesco Bank? Although you did say that at a point in time, you said in the Senate you defeated some move to have Liberians discouraged from pursuing claims against banks that were operating in the country. Were you a member of the Senate at the time when the aide-de-camp to the president tore up the writ that had been issued by the Supreme Court on the Tradesco Bank?
I don't know, Mr. Commissioner. I might have been. Why, sir?
This was...
I'm not sure. I might have been. Why? Why you ask?
Well, I just wanted to find out what was your position then on that issue.
You see, Commissioner, our government is divided into three branches: the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature. The legislature make the laws. Okay? If the president went and killed somebody, I don't investigate it. That's for the court. You understand? Like I had a lawyer friend who's in government now, who said, oh, Brumskine was in the Senate when they killed somebody. Things happening now. You have to understand the role of government officials. What the senator is supposed to do. Let's suppose I were in the Senate. Let's suppose the sheriff went to the court. I mean to the bank, as you said. And I think the aide-de-camp, the president went and beat the sheriff. What he did? Arrested him?
Threw up the writ.
What the Senate is supposed to do? This is judicial business. It's not Senate business. The Chief Justice, the Supreme Court, will send for that person to deal with them. It's not the Senate business, Commissioner.
Okay.
How much longer do I have to be subjected to this? I got other things to do.
Well, when we get through, you have all the time you wish.
What?
We'll get through. You have all the time you wish. I want to come back to the Status of Forces Agreement. The Status of Forces Agreement, you will recall that at the time that agreement was being discussed and it was established that Mr. Taylor was operationally active in Sierra Leone. Liberian fighters from the MPFL, from the government of Liberia, whatever, were active in Sierra Leone. And one of the objectives such sought to achieve, and Mr. Taylor said it on radio on several times, that ECOMOG planes were leaving here and going to Sierra Leone and bombing, carrying out bombing raids in Sierra Leone. And he did not want to see planes, ECOMOG planes, taking off from here to conduct such missions in Sierra Leone. All of that tied into sub-regional security. And like I say again, that against the backdrop of what you expressed as regrets, that not taking the opportunity to explain to Liberian people the real intents and purposes of SOFA, how you think such explanations now would have resonated with Liberian people then? Had you made such explanations, would it have made a difference? How did it resonate? From your own assessment, how did such resonate among the Liberian people? And why do you think it resonated in the way it did?
If I understand your question is if I had explained to them in 1995, right?
No, you said you did not, you regret
I did not explain to the Liberian people.
Yes.
I wasn't a politician at the time. I was a lawyer, right? You know when the South Forces Agreement was negotiated? 1995. That's what we're talking about. Taylor involvement in Freetown when I learned about it, 1998.
So is there a link between law and politics?
Say that again.
Is there a link between law and politics?
I don't know. I'm trying to say to you, you were talking about why I didn't explain. Okay?
You say you were not a politician at the time.
Right.
I'm just asking.
A politician has to explain. I hope I had explained. If I had explained to the people, then you probably wouldn't be asking all these questions. Because you would have understood it in 1995. But I'm having a difficult time, Commissioner, getting across to you, even in 2008.
Is there a link between law and politics?
What?
Is there a link between law and politics?
What does that have to do with reconciliation?
Question, is there a link between law
what
and
does that have to do with
politics?
reconciliation?
But you don't have to answer if you don't wish.
I'm not going to answer it. It has nothing to do with reconciliation. I allow you to drag this conversation out because it tied in with something that I mentioned today.
No,
but any question you add that not connected to reconciliation.
No, you said you did not, you regret not having explained to the Liberian people because at the time you were not a politician. You were just a lawyer.
That's why I didn't do it.
That's what I'm asking. Is there a link between law and politics?
There's a link between politics and anything. Politics is the way I would govern ourselves.
Law and politics.
There's a link between politics and anything. Even
law and politics.
Even through the Reconciliation Commissioner.
Between law and politics, is there a link?
I don't know.
All right. Now, were you in the government at the time of the killing of the Doki family?
Yeah. Yes, I was.
Did you follow the trial?
Did I follow the what?
The trial.
No, I didn't.
But what was your take on the issue? What was your stance on the issue? Was the rule of law subverted?
On what issue? Somebody got killed. It's a crime. Whoever committed the crime should have been punished. I'm in the Senate. I'm not in the court.
But you were practicing before the court.
No, I explained to you. From the time I became senator, I imposed a prohibition on myself.
Self-imposed?
Yes, not to go to court.
And you say you went there once, though.
Say what?
You went there once.
John, why do we don't talk the thing? I mean, you're wasting these people's time. Why don't we do the thing after this session over a drink, and then we can make progress? I gotta go. I'm sorry.
We have to contextualize our discussions. We're examining an era of governance in which you were a key player. there were a lot of human rights abuses that occurred during that period. Do you align or do you distance yourself from those abuses that were committed? And I refer to the Doki incident as one. Where did you stand on the issue?
Is that an accusation against me for the crime of murder?
No.
What are you asking me? Will I distance myself from them? Did I commit murder? What are you asking me?
No. Did you distance yourself from the conduct of that government? Did you express opposition to the way in which...
To killing them.
Not just the killing, and the trial, as a lawyer, the way in which the trial went, the way in which justice was subverted.
That presupposes that I had knowledge that they were going to be killed for me to object? Is that what you're asking?
No.
What are you asking, sir?
As a politician concerned about the rule of law in the country and about extra presidential authority, extrajudicial killings and all of that, as a senator, influential senator, what was your take on the issue? What was your stance?
You know, when a criminal matter is being handled, you don't jump off the street and just jump in it. Even in the Senate, you know what we do? We appoint committees to oversee what's happening.
What was the report of the committee that you appointed?
Say again?
Did you appoint any committee to oversee?
No, we don't oversee a criminal trial.
No.
We oversee what the various agencies of government are doing.
Yes.
That's our function.
Did you set up any such committees to
invest? No, how can you investigate a criminal matter in the court? I'm disciplined and reprimanded my colleagues from trying to conduct court in the Senate building. There is a clear division between the functions of governments.
Were you a member of the legislature when the Strategic Commodities Act was passed?
When the what?
Strategic Commodities Act.
No, I left the country.
Now, in your legal practice as a senator, did you at any time have any business interests that coincided with interests of other close associates of Mr. Taylor?
Well, you gotta define close associate of Mr. Taylor, you know what I mean? You gotta tell me what you're talking about.
Now, I'm talking about using your official position to enhance personal business interests and all of that.
No, I said that this morning.
Now, the OTC operated in Grand Bassa, and by your own statement, massively depleted the forests of Grand Bassa and Rivers. Were you a member of the government at the time the OTC came into
No, you see, but Commissioner, you're not being fair to me. All the questions you're asking, I discussed them this morning in my statement. Okay? So if you went out, we were conducting the people business, don't come back. I will not answer it. The statement is here. You may read the statement. Okay? I went over all those things this morning. I spent all my time. I got things to do.
I have to ask, you gave a statement. From your statement, ask questions.
You're asking the same question that I already answered, sir.
For emphasis.
No. Ask questions I haven't discussed.
You are not. So, you did not express any opposition to OTC. Now, you're a politician acting during a particular period, representing the people of Grand Bassa County.
Ladies and gentlemen,
their interests.
I would hate to walk out of the commission, out of your hearing. But if Commissioner Steele doesn't have any question to ask, I suggest that he quit. I can't spend my evening here with John. John, my friend, he wanted to go have a beer and talk down the road, we'll do it. But I'm not going to spend my entire afternoon listening to John over the same thing that we already discussed this morning. So, sir, unless you have something to add, please, out of respect to the commission, let me go. Yeah?
So you refuse to answer the question?
I refuse to answer the question. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, I beg your permission. I have to leave.
Commissioners who are not asked here.
Yeah,
so
okay.
if you can interact with John, we'll ask them. If they don't have any question to ask, you say your last word and then you leave.
Yeah.
Martha.
My final question. What would you say was the human rights record and respect of the rule of law under the Taylor administration?
Well, my human rights record,
What would you say, how would you describe the human rights record of the Taylor government?
I think that's public knowledge. I think it was terrible.
And
Thank you, sir. Leave it, John. Let me go. I can't do things.
who, in your opinion, should bear responsibility for such terrible human rights record?
Yes, thank you.
You can ask your questions.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead and ask your question. Go ahead and ask your question.
Mr. Witness, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Okay. My name is Massa Washington. And thanks for coming. I think I have probably just one question for you. Do I need to speak a bit louder because you're trying to strain? Okay.
Yeah, please speak a little louder.
Okay, sorry.
After Commissioner Stew, I can't hear very well anymore.
Okay, that's okay. I was just, my name is Massa Washington.
No, I know the commissioner.
Okay, right. I have one question for you. Hopefully, when you made your presentation this morning, you spoke about the politics of exclusion and intolerance that you think or feel is a part of, is contributing to the problems that we have in Liberia. And you also mentioned that this kind of politic of exclusion and intolerance is also responsible for the feeling of alienation that various groups of Liberians have experienced in our nation's history from time to time. My question here is, in 1996, at a press conference here in Monrovia, you made a comment in which I will try to quote. You said, "We want our country back. We will not forgive the people of the 70s." Can you please clarify this comment, if you can remember? And also, do you find this comment at variance with your position you just stated today in your presentation of a unified society, of a just society? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, your statement is not exactly correct. I would never say that I can't forgive someone. I would never say that. I think the statement you have reference to, it was made with regards to the country being taken back from the militants, okay, those who had caused violence in this country. Okay, I think at that place it was, I think it was the negotiation of the Styles of Forces Agreement conference. And Benedict Sano was there with me. Peter Bonan Jala was there with me. So it could not have been an ethnic thing, because that's what people had alluded to. But I never said that I couldn't forgive anybody, because my upbringing and my faith would not allow me not to forgive someone. Okay, and I don't blame any one group of people for the mess that we find ourselves in. I think we all are responsible one way or the other.
And my second question, you spoke about the OTC situation, and but then also in explaining about the OCT and the misinformation about your relationship as lawyer to OTC, you commented that no lawyer should be held responsible for the actions of his clients. Now, I'm just thinking from a moral standpoint, I think society in a way obligates us morally as members of society to do certain things that society deems right. Now, do you think that lawyers have a moral obligation to the society to maybe dissuade the clients if they think the clients are going wrong, or if they think the clients are doing things detriment to the interests of the general society. I just wanted you to comment on this. I'm not a lawyer, and yes.
No, Commissioner, you're completely correct. If the lawyer knows of his client doing something against the law, the lawyer's duty is to quit the client, because or else he could become an accessory to the crime. To the crime. The point I was making is that the obligation that we have as lawyers extend to the constitutional rights of defendants, including people who are accused of committing murder. So if all the lawyers decided we're not going to defend anybody who is accused of committing a murder, what happens in society? That person, because remember, he's not guilty yet, right? He's only accused. If he doesn't have legal representation, he probably could go to jail even if he were innocent. So when we taught in law school, is that we have an obligation to defend all people, right? But if the guy came to you and said, I'm going to kill somebody, you got an obligation to go expose it, to talk about it. If you know the client is in one of those situations where he committing crime, your duty is quit. I hope I answered your question, ma'am.
You answer my question, but I will probably understand more if you provided more clarification, because from media reports and from other sources, the TRC is also looking into economic crimes, and we're looking at companies and concessions also in the logging business, and we know that's what OTC did. And you were a retainer lawyer for OTC, or just one of his lawyers?
In this morning, I left Liberia March 1999. When I came back to Liberia, 2003, I heard the rumor around that I was OTC lawyer, so I sent to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to research the articles of incorporation for OTC. It was then I found out that it was incorporated in July 1999. I had been out of the country for 3-4 months already. Okay? When they did start operation, I don't know.
So in other words, you had absolutely no relationship to OTC?
None at all.
Oh, but how did the lie spread?
No, let me leave my
okay, friend. But thanks. It was very important. You see how important this question is, because now it clarifies.
Right. That, that's what I tried to, Commissioner Washington, that's what I tried to explain this morning. How to, people, you have to realize our culture. Somebody called me, Michelle, one experience with you just this week. We on the radio? We're still on radio? Are we still on radio? Oh, okay, I will not share that experience with you. But let me tell you how life starts. Okay, anybody in Liberia can just hear something. Somebody just say, oh, Master Washington, I saw her talking with Brumskine. You are talking with me now. But somebody go say, I saw her talking with Brumskine. The next thing you will hear, Brumskine and Master Washington was somewhere down the road. It goes like that, from one person to another. So,
okay, thank you very much. I mean, thanks for the clarification too.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Witness. I'm Commissioner Omosila. Thank you for the clarification and especially your recommendation. Two aspects of your recommendation that was very touching to me was your comment on the ex-combatant and about the social services. Why this is more touching is because you really agree with me that during the conflict the youth were greatly affected, and seeing them, just this morning, two of the people that came to this commission testify, youth, both of them brothers, but they were on the opposite side. But now they are in the society, nothing at all to do. They only pass around every day, just looking for delivery. I hope after the TRC make its recommendation, these things will be taken into consideration so that these youth can be empowered and integrated in the society. And I know especially your recommendation about the agriculture and the engineer services, if they are integrated in that, it will be very helpful to this nation. And after seeing that, you said when you joined, after you were elected to be the president pro tem of the Liberian Senate, on 3 occasions you were to be asked to, you were threatened to be removed. The first one you talk about after 3 months. I just wanted to share what was the reason, because the third one I can understand that after you came from Nigeria and you made that revelation to the Senate and the resolution was passed to find out whether Liberia was actually involved in the Sierra Leone war, and then you sent a joint resolution to the parliament in Freetown. Maybe that didn't go well with the president or the first branch of government. But the question now is, the first 3 months, why was it that you were asked to step down, or why the position was threatened? And the second one, when you went to Nigeria during the election to observe, did you, because usually in election, the government, you go to represent the government, was it based on the government request or, the Senate, or did you go there as an observer? Why is it that, and is it because of that?
You asked the most difficult question. The reason being that the other people involved in the process that I rather not make mention. But let me try to answer it as best as I can. The first incident, October. You remember I mentioned in my statement that a foreign service officer nominated was commissioned before we confirmed, right? So I was there trying to do what is right, instill democracy and democratic practices, sent for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Although the man apologized, went home, that was a sore spot. So when I left and went to the States in October, a lot of current was under here, and they tried to move me. I went to Nigeria not as a representative of the government or the Senate. I got an invitation to me. I guess other people outside Liberia saw that I was trying to do what is right. And they said, come go with us. Go observe these elections here. And I mean, that answered that part of it. And there was the first part you asked about the ex-combatants.
No, the ex-combatant, you actually make a recommendation.
Right.
On how they can be reintegrated.
Right, you see, the thing is, some people think that when you talk about these people, they've been so bad, right? But we must remember that it's not just about helping them. It's about helping you and me. All the experts, I read to you what some of the experts say. You lead the boss here, the adult, what do they know how to do? And to fight. The CHF came from America, they did survey here of 1,000 ex-combatants. And they say, yeah, even one woman involved. I got a report here. She said, I think she was 24 when she started fighting. She's now 38, she got 4 children. She said, my children will not die if I got to fight again to feed them, I will fight. She said one of her first husband got killed in one of the wars. She married to her second husband, but he got no job. So we're saying to our government, it's something we said. Liberty Party had it in a platform, 2005. You gotta do something for these people. You want to build roads. You know when we started using the tractor and the yellow equipments? Late in this country here. Maybe the 60s. You know we used to build roads with hoes and shovels and diggers. They say you got 100,000 of these fellas around. put them in the army. Okay? The man in the army, he being disciplined, because the same study I'm telling you about, it tells you that the boy have not been de-traumatized. So we have recommended put them in the armed forces. Let them be there for 2 years or more. They're being helped, they're being healed. You find a job for them to do. They go build the schools. They're being taught. Build the clinics. Help to build the roads. Dig the dirt, fill out the potholes. Maybe you give them some money every month. But then in the army, you know what they're doing. They post it 24/7. You know what they're doing. And you reduce the risk of us going back to war.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Witness, for your patience and for cooperating with the TRC. You finished your testimony now, and so you're about to leave. We normally ask, do you have a last word that you want to say to the TRC before going?
Thank you, Madam Acting Chair, members of the Commission. This has been quite an experience. And I came, if you heard, even before you started sending for people, I had said I would come. Because I thought it was important that I tell my story, share my experience with the Commission. Let the Liberian people hear that I believe with all my heart that we can do it differently, that we can build our country. I believe there's still men out there and women who are principled, who will not be bought with a few dollars. I thank you again. I, however, would be unfair to myself if I left without making reference to the line of questioning by Commissioner Steele. I like him very much as a friend, but I think Commissioner Steele should be aware that this process is greater than any of us. It is way above our personal differences. What we went through, I'm not sure how many other Liberians want to come before this commission. Had I known that how he would have behaved, I would never have come. If I want to share with you, I would have mailed it to you. There's some of us who demand respect because of the way we conduct ourselves, and he knows me personally. I thank you, and God bless you.
And on behalf, before you leave, on behalf of the TRC, I want to apologize. This process is not a process that is done to in any way harass or intimidate anybody. But we are sorry for that, and we hope that you will also forgive us for that. Thank you so much. Okay.